demolition, and it produces a P wave and an S wave. So what length of time does that take? It takes, for a free fall speed from the roof to the ground, it's about 4 seconds. But the portion of time that the ground shook was more than twice that. So that doesn't answer the question either of what we saw. And with building 7, what is very telling is that they calculated when the P wave and the S wave should have arrived because they could not pick it out from background noise. They couldn't even pick out where the surface wave arrived at one of these stations. So there's 5 different stations reporting, and they had to calculate when the S wave and P wave would have arrived, and it was not there. The signal did not travel through the Earth. So if we have Seattle King Dome, we're going to look at things relative to that. That made a 2.3 on the Richter scale when it was blown up by controlled demolition. And we have these 2 towers. Let's say for the Tower 2 was the first to go. So if we turn it to dust, all but the bottom 16 stories, and then drop a 16-story building to the ground, we record approximately the same seismic signal as what was recorded on 9/11. Just pretend this rest doesn't exist. And for Tower 2, if you turn it into dust above the 20th story and just drop a 20-story building to the ground, you get the seismic signal that was recorded. And for building 7, it's all but the bottom 2.5 stories. Where's the rest of the building? Makes it 0.6 on the Richter scale. That's like a jackhammer. It should have sounded like it was raining dump trucks. You know, big dump trucks go down the road, they wake you up at night because they vibrate the ground. So, and you notice this, there'll be some column that starts falling down this corner. I think it's in here. And we're going to follow it down and watch how it just turns to dust completely. And as well as these other things. Here it is. Okay, it's got the dust trailing behind it. This is a solid piece. It's like ice cream melting. It's going away. And if you focus on various other parts, you'll see the same thing. There's no sound with this. This is a high-speed version of it. You can see that piece again. And these big chunks over here. So you see it's turning to dust as it comes down. And we're going to go look down on the ground right next to where this was coming down. This is the Verizon building here. Whoops, right here. And we're going to look at the corner right below there. That's the Verizon building right there. This is that intersection where that material was falling. Right after everything's settled, these people who were hiding come out of their hiding places. And they're probably in awe. There's, no building here. You can see sky. Looking at the body language, the guy with his hands on his hips, arms folded, arms at side. They're probably in total amazement and shock and just bewildered. I call this picture the Twilight Zone because they probably felt like they just walked into the Twilight Zone of watching this dustification. There's a cluster of core columns that remains here. Watch what happens to them. They just faint. I believe that's the upper part of where those firefighters survived in stairwell B. Those are core columns. This is another one. See how it peels away like a banana? And you see this clear air around it. Some folks like to say dust settled on it. Well, dust can't settle on something like that fast, without seeing it. And there's from across the river, you can see those two. And then there's a sequence from the northern view. And my detractors like to say, oh, it fell over. And because the dust was so fine, it hung in the air. Well, if the dust is so fine, it hung in the air, how could it be settled instantly on these vertical columns? We saw how it was peeled away like a banana. But it comes a point where it's no longer a crisp boundary and just turns to dust. I call it dustification. I mean, where would you? Because this is coming down close to this building. But notice there's some chunks that go missing. And notice the dust kind of squirting out the ends of those pieces. You can see it trailing. Is there a reason why it didn't? You didn't hear a thud when it hit?
No. Go low to the corner. Hold on.
Notice it's spiraling around. And if it was smoke from a fire and it really needed to get out, why isn't it coming out these windows? If there's a traffic jam, why does it take the path of least resistance? The wind that day was 7 or 8 miles an hour.
No. Go low to the corner. Hold on.
Didn't cook them. Just left them covered with dust. I like these abrupt lines. Like you can see where this other fellow's tie was tucked in there. He was just covered. He didn't get cooked. The dust went a certain distance and then went up. Another bizarre thing. Again, it's important just to take in all of the data, and it starts telling you the story of what happened. Let the evidence tell you the story instead of forcing it to go a particular direction. And I wouldn't have seen this before, that just all particular distance then goes up. There's a video filmed by Bob and Bree, who had an apartment up here. Bless them for saving this video and then sharing it with the world. This is an image from there, and the dust doesn't quite touch their window and then goes up.
Oh my God!
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! I told you! Oh my God! All these people! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
Oh, it's awful.
Oh baby, how's Lily? Oh my God!
Come on, let's go to the other one.
Yeah.
Let's see how it's starting.
Is this dangerous?
It's just smoke.
There's no danger about the buildings. Is the air conditioner turned off in the room?
Good thing.
And the windows closed in the bedroom?
Near the area are an absolute crazy situation. The entire top of the building just collapsed.
The entire building just collapsed.
Building just collapsed.
We're going to leave because
See how it just starts shooting up? It doesn't touch the window.
This is a devastating development.
It doesn't go past here.
Is no more. We do not know at this point the extent of injuries or casualties, how many people were in these buildings trying to get out. We've seen some
Oh, people are running away. They're running away. What are they going to do?
Green
You guys
grass.
gotta run away.
That grass stayed green the whole time.
I think it's gonna be blown away.
After the South Tower went away. And this is 15 minutes before the North Tower went away. How could that fine of dust have landed in that short of time? It's fallen out of the air because it's clear. And there's several other pictures that indicate this, that it was coarse dust that landed and then became fine dust and began rising up like it kept breaking down. Toasted cars, we got to get to the toasted cars. I say they're toast, they're history. I can't say they're burnt because I don't know that, but they're toast. I just decided to use that word to say something happened, messed them up. You can't fix it, you got to get a new one. It's history. This is a police car found on FDR Drive. I don't know how it got to, I don't know where it was toasted. There were some that were witnessed as being toasted on FDR Drive. But this one is quite interesting in that it has an abrupt, toasted, not toasted. Like it's like it's on the showroom floor. It just had a new wax job back there. What abruptly stops? A real fire, a regular fire, doesn't do that. It would be lapping around the corner. Also, why aren't the lights melted? And you have the circular spot on the other side. Gas tank is still, fine. This is where all the toasted cars we're seeing that I'm aware of, as well as the toasted car lot. And the ones we were looking at were down here. And an emergency medical person said you could tell it was hot at the Trade Center because you could feel the heat from the bridge. But paper wasn't burning down here. How could somebody over here, 3/4 miles away, feel heat? Something that they perceived as heat.
And you said you saw melted tour buses, melted cars?
The cars that were right down there, it was just unbelievable. They were twisted and melted into nothing. The debris is just unbelievable. And then you can see fire trucks and police vehicles that were down there early that all their windows, the windshield are completely blown out must have been from when debris dropped.
But even more jarring, I think, is this scene right here. Look at these two cars placed on top of one another. I think when you think about the impact that these planes must have had, it's hard to visualize.
I don't know what to say.
Because everything melted. But here, at least you have some remnants. You have literally an engine that is melded together with other parts of the car. Moving over, you've got another car they moved here. It looks like it's been through a war. You can see the papers, all the burned out papers from the building. You see the soot and the dirt, and it just shows you how devastating this blast was. Look across the street there. You've got a Con Ed truck that, some of the Con Ed people now looking at, examining, trying to figure out which truck that actually was. But that truck, too, in terrible shape. So while many of the items, the steel, was literally melted.
People who have been right down next to the base of what was the trade towers say there's virtually nothing.
Yes, we'll stop here on this toasted bus picture and realize there's no burnt marks, no scorch marks. The toasted bus. But yeah, these poor reporters, they're doing the best they can of window glass. Just gone.
Go. 3, 2. Oh, man. More debris falling from a nearby building, the World Trade Center. We're at West Broadway and Barclay. Very difficult to breathe here, but look around. This must have been ground zero where this thing blew up. Car after car after car, buses completely obliterated and burned straight down to the steel. Behind me.
Here they come. Doo-doo-doo. They don't seem at all concerned that they're walking through this fire. They aren't worried about a car blowing up. Now, this is an interesting picture. Often we were shown this by certain individuals who would say, see, molten metal. But wait a minute, what's really going on here? This is an igloo cooler and a trash can that aren't melted. If this is white hot, then it's got to be, hot enough that it's going to melt this aluminum. Aluminum melts at around 660 centigrade, and it's a kind of barely a beet red. You have to be like 1,000 degrees centigrade in order for it to glow. So when aluminum's glowing and it's not a puddle, something else is going on. So we're told about pools of molten metal. Well, that's paper.
Mill or a volcano. Those are quotes. Giant pools.
What about the pictures of them dragging oxygen hoses all over the steaming supposed hot metal? If it were that hot, you wouldn't dare do that, would you?
Would you?
Well, we do have the infrared photos of the molten metal.
Well, again, what melted the metal? Was it heat?
Or was it something else? Doesn't it bend over? Doesn't it bend around the horizontal axis? Why is everything straight? If you overload these outer columns, they're going to bend. If you mash something down real hard, it's going to bow out. Yet what we have, instead of having it bend over, is curling around the vertical axis. Here's a cluster of 3 columns. And this lasagna noodle, see, you can't confuse that with a piece of food, but it emphasizes the fact that this isn't loading that does this. Something else happened to this. This is straight, it curled around the vertical axis, not the horizontal axis. How do you get something to bend more than 180 degrees and not even crack? It's a smooth bend and it splits at the seams. This is a very interesting one. I'd like to have somebody, an engineer who claims that that's normal, draw me a free body diagram and show me the loading to put on that beam to make it do that. It's not like a rubber band that recoils. If it's hot and it's flowing, it doesn't have the strength to recoil. So how do you explain this crinkling up, like curling ribbon? That's what buckled beams look like. They don't do that. You see through holes there. It just happened that one place. This was found in Banker's Trust. Banker's Trust was determined to have not had any fires in it. So we're going to begin the proof of concept. Okay, here's what we found at the World Trade Center. And here's something that John Hutchison bent. It's molybdenum. It's not cracked in the corners either. Smooth curling. When I first contacted John Hutchison, I sent him this picture and said, does your neighborhood ever get to looking like this? Because you have this toasted vehicle here, and the one in front is parked in the right place, but it's just got the tires in the wrong direction. It's not oriented correctly. And notice all the marble around the doorway is gone. The rest of the building, there's no stab wounds in the building, no big beams went flying through. Another weird thing is the window glass. Sometimes just the outer pane's broken. The rock doesn't do that. Evidence of levitation.
So far came down, I was across the street, and I picked up the camera just out of habit. And something in the back of my mind said, run, run, run. And never in 20 years of shooting in New York have I run from an assignment. But something in the back of my head just said, run. And as I hit the corner of Liberty Street, it was almost being picked up by a tornado. Almost being picked up by it was like being picked up by the black cloud. That black cloud had substance. It was like night, but it had a solid feel to it. It was like gravel, hot gravel, and just picked me up and tossed me about a block. At one second I was running, and the next second I was airborne. And I lost my glasses, I lost my cell phone, I lost my pager, but managed to hold on to both cameras.
But it threw you for a block?
I was back down at Ground Zero last week and walked the area where I have a pretty good recollection of where I was and where I wound up, and it was just under a city block.
And it was this blast of warm air. It wasn't hot. It was warm. And it picked me up and threw me up against the wall of the building that was...
You were picked up off the ground.
Physically picked up off the ground.
I remember an explosion. At that point, I got knocked out. I don't remember anything. Then I got up, and I looked out the window because the windows exploded, and the street below caved in.
How many cars there? Leaves are still in the trees. This is in good shape, but upside down. The cars appear to be either flipped or toasted. Now, let's consider something else here. John Hutchison's work, he's got water drifting up, levitation of water. Now we'll come back and talk about the weather. We need to talk about the weather, right? Someone thought it was a nice, beautiful day. Well, it was right directly above Manhattan, but not...
You specifically, that's what the allure, but there is an area storm that I am not, the juices don't flow, and you look and check it out.
Remember that? When that, I watched that live.
And maybe a star on YouTube, you got to get up close and personal. And
this was Hurricane Ike, I think.
That was recent. That was, wasn't this Rita?
You would know.
You know what? I think it was Rita. Rita in Galveston, Texas. Yeah, Galveston. And, obviously Katrina before that changed so many of our histories. It was so traumatic, and it's one funny thing I think of if only a hurricane had come on 9/11. Remember, they didn't know how to use instruments, the terrorists. They took off in Boston, and they literally, after they took over the aircraft, they steered by line of sight. And it was that crystal clear September day.
Sure was.
And if it were only one of these weather days, history would have been rewritten. And I think about that a lot now, and especially this time of year. So we're the peak of hurricane season.
Yeah, you're celebrating 40 years?
40 years, imagine that. Isn't
40 years.
Longevity has its own revenge. I've outlived like 15 generations of TV critics. Yeah. They all predicted I'd be done in a couple of weeks.
Well, do you still get...
Everyone has those stories, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
this was just 2 years ago.
Well, I don't know about that. Here again, you're asking us to deal with a fact I'm not aware of. I never heard about flames or fumes. I mean, fumes coming out of a building. I'll tell you what, let me go to Steve in Florida. Steve in Florida, you're on the air. Go ahead, please, with Dr. Judy Wood.
Hi, Joy. Thank you for taking my call. Am I loud and clear?
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Judy, you have misrepresented the facts concerning Hurricane Aaron. I live here in hurricane country, Florida. I track all the hurricanes. Aaron hit Corpus Christi, Texas, 15 August 2007. Your opinion concerning 911 are not consistent with the facts provided on 911 ripple effect, last man out, Richard Gage's blueprint for truth, Blues Change Final Cut, Zero, an investigation into 911, and many other video documentaries. I don't know what planet you've come from.
Okay. I guess he's gone. I don't know what happened to Steve.
As for Hurricane Aaron, they did not retire that name. It has been used several times. It was the first hurricane, I believe, of the 2001 hurricane season.
All right. Let me go back to George. George.
One funny thing I think of if only a hurricane had come on 9/11, and it was that crystal clear September day.
Sure was.
And if it were only one of these weather days, history would have been rewritten. And I think about that a lot.
This is what was shown on television that morning of 9/11. This is where the hurricane was at that moment. See anything missing? This is where the hurricane was, here. The levitation. He's got a static field, and he's doing some other things with putting in some kind of energy, and he's got these static balls, I mean, these steel balls levitating. I think they're actually silver. And Thomas Townsend Brown also looked into the same area about using electricity to build Coral Castle. Here's John Hutchison standing in front of the Great Pyramid. There's a person down here in the background. You can see they're almost 2 blocks tall. Well, that's about the same height as this doorway of Coral Castle. So they're about the same size blocks. They're 15 tons each. So this guy built his castle by himself. We don't know how this one was built. We can only guess. They weren't necessarily through both panes. That's strange. Throw a rock through a window, it breaks the window because the window is brittle and it bends, and brittle materials are weak in tension, so it shatters the glass. So how do you get a round hole without cracks running out? Turns out somebody replicated that very thing. This is my analogy saying, okay, if you drop a rock in a pond, it ripples outwards. Maybe something like that is what ripples outwards with longitudinal waves that causes the glass to break in a rounded pattern. Now let's think about hurricanes. What do? Well, Hurricane Andrew drove this 2x4 through a tree. Piece of plywood. And with tornadoes, I'm sure you've all heard about straw through trees. It's not because they're flying fast. Something weird is going on. There's John Hutchison's sample with a butter knife in a piece of aluminum. He also has one with wood in the aluminum. If the aluminum's hot enough to melt, the wood would have burned up. So it's strange. Now, when I found these, you can see the blow-ups. I wondered, why on earth would the car door be peeling split thickness? It's not a laminated structure. Didn't know what that meant, but it was definitely a category of data, and I put it aside. Later, when I found John Hutchison's work, wow, he can peel open extruded aluminum. That's not laminated, it's extruded. So we have these coins from the World Trade Center. People like to say they're melted together. I'll point out that zinc melts before copper does. It also boils before copper melts. So that would likely explode, but it's one of the lowest, zinc is one of the lowest melting point materials. So what gives? Why is this stuff stuck together? And this is the only surviving file cabinet from Ben & Jerry's ice cream store. Here's the piece of wood embedded in the aluminum from John Hutchison's work without elevated temperature. Same with these. WTC6 with these cylindrical holes in it. Well, here's John Hutchison's aluminum sample with cylindrical holes in it. It's as though there's a pencil line in space around which material at the same radius is dustified. And Tesla coil. And come to think of it, ahead of a storm system, people feel the storm coming. Birds know to head for cover. You can feel the static field ahead of the storm. Here's another thing about storm systems. I don't know if this needs a click or not. This is from this past spring in Texas, where there's a bunch of tornadoes, and you had flying trucks.
It went across a transport company, trees flying through the air, the trailers, there you go, a couple of semi, look at that, the beds of the trailers
twirling around in the sky, and then dropping down from at least 50 feet high down into the ground. We saw trees. There goes another semi.
And it's spinning.
It's spinning. Down it comes. Bang. Lands on its nose right down at the ground. Big piece of a tree there that just got hurled up, I believe it was. So certainly we have seen a destructive tornado on the south side of Dallas, still within parts of the area near south of Grapevine, north of Arlington, a possible tornado in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area, as well as over on the east side of Dallas, in toward the area around the Mesquite area, just to the west of Mesquite and east of that.
Those are flying trucks during WTC2's demise, or WTC1's. So here we have also the front of Bankers Trust. This was the only non-WTC building that was severely damaged. It wasn't destroyed that day. They actually repaired it. Once they repaired it, they started taking it apart. Huh? They got it down to this level where they had repaired it in deconstruction there. When they got it down to that level, that's the area that had been repaired. It looks like it's been at the bottom of the ocean for 100 years. Extreme degradation. And it makes one wonder, was the building continuing to disintegrate? And that's why they had to take it down after they repaired it. And it took them 10 years to take it apart. Now we're going to look at tritium. We refer to them as jumpers, but did they really jump? They left the building, but we don't know why. Here's the airplane-shaped hole. This wingtip always gets to me, how thin it is. And we have some interesting people up here hanging out of the 105th floor. Closer look, looks like this guy's taking his pants off. This guy has his shirt off. You know, if there's a fire in there, your clothes protect you from fire. We don't see smoke coming out these windows. What's going on here? Why on earth would someone want to take their clothes off outside the building? They want to live. They're hanging on to the building. This guy's hanging from one hand and one foot, taking his pants off. Let's say he has some weird fetish that he just needs to take his pants off. Well, if there's smoke inside, you take it a big deep breath, step in, get the pants off, step back out. Why hang from the outside of the building? Well, if I were there and if I was told the building's on fire, I'm going to head to the bathroom right away before we lose water pressure. Wet down whatever extra clothing I have around, wrap around my head, and head for the stairs. I'd be wet. If the fire sprinklers came on, I'd be wet. If they didn't come on, it was hot, I'd be wet, sweating. Good chance that their clothing was wet. Now, why would they want to take off wet clothing? You've heard of active denial system? I'm not saying that's what this is, but just as a parallel. It's a microwave, they put it for crowd control. And it makes you think that you're burning up, so you just have to get out of there. You just leave no matter what. You don't think about it. So maybe some people were jumping from that. Would be a good reason why you'd want to take your wet clothes off. Microwave is many times worse for wet clothing. I don't know if that's what it was, but it's consistent with something like that going on inside the building, but not outside the building. And we do know the building was turning to dust inside for the hour before its demise. There's people who say it was thermite. Okay. What? Reports of it, as well as, evidence of it in other ways. But there's a cute story about a new probationary officer, first day out of school for being a firefighter, and he's supposed to stick with his boss. And they get up to some place, and the boss says, "All right, everybody, drop everything and go down a few stairs." And they get down, and then they eventually start going back up again. And the boss says, "Well, where's your mask?" "Well, you said to drop everything." So, but the poor guy. So the boss said, "You get out of here." So here's this firefighter making his way down the stairs. He gets down to the third floor, and 100% of the light is blocked out. because he described it as having been turned to dust. He knew it wasn't smoke because he could breathe, but the floor had turned to dust. It was completely filling the air. There's a lot of stories similar to that. Now, there were folks who somehow believed that thermite had something to do with it. Well, let's see if we can make some. You have a steel structure, the towers, with aluminum cladding. Let's see if you grind them up. And you end up with rust and aluminum powder. You know what that is? Thermite. Those are the ingredients of thermite. So those ingredients are going to be there anyway. But what does thermite do? Well, here's a test of thermite here. Welding a railroad track.
Blinded by the light.
If I tell you, the answer is 27. Am I right? Well, what's the question? What's the problem I'm solving? If you don't know the problem, how do you know if the answer is right or wrong? You first have to define a problem before you can solve it. And it can be referred to as a syntax error because the order matters. Like when doing this math, are you adding those numbers together first or multiplying these first? You'll end up with a different answer depending on how you group them. The same thing with crime solving or with problem solving. The order matters. So if you start out with a theory, we have thermite or we have bombs or we have airplanes or whatever theory someone has, and they take their pick from this list of things, and then they go cherry picking and searching for the data that's going to support their theory. Ground up, would someone see that dust trailing off of you? No. You need more dust. Okay, let's say you get a couple of armloads of flour and eject it out as you're falling. Can you impersonate this? No, that's opaque dust. It initially blocked out all of the sunlight, 100% of the sunlight, so it was pitch black. It's very dense dust. And you come to the realization that these pieces of material are becoming dust. They're frothing up into dust as they fall. And they didn't hit the ground. But if you didn't know that these turn to dust, and you start out with an assumption, you wouldn't get to the right answer because do you know of anything that could turn a building to dust in midair? Something turned it to dust in midair. So it's important to first determine what happened. It's basically missing. Tower 1 is missing over there. I think everyone would have to agree there's not enough stuff left piled up on the ground. So again, we were looking out there. Now we're going to look the other direction. And there's this main body goes missing. Just the north wing is left. The building just went missing. That's building 4. It was a 9-story building. So this is what was there beforehand, and it just basically all went away. And a satellite image shows, all sorts of holes that were in those buildings. The middle part of building 6 is gone. It looks like a post hole digger cored it out. You have holes over here on Liberty Street. Even some holes in Vesey Street. And notice again that north wing is remaining, but the main body is gone. And this is Bankers Trust, where you're looking out the window, seeing a non-building across the street. Few people talk about this building. It's a 22-story skyscraper. Well, it would be the tallest building in most small towns. It went away except for that last little corner. And building 7 over here as well. Every building with the WTC prefix was destroyed that day. So we're going to look at this direction. Now, a lot of people talk about hearing the BBC announce early that Building 7 went away. Well, CNN did the same thing for One Liberty Plaza, but it's still there. We just get excited and want to be the first to report. And we're going to go down and look on the ground and see what it looks like down in here. Looking at the front, it doesn't look clobbered by anything. This picture, I believe, was taken on 9/11, later in the day. I don't see any big steel beams on the ground. There's aluminum cladding. The towers were built with steel columns on the outside that were covered with aluminum cladding. And you see the aluminum cladding. The ambulance looks pretty good. This was the day after 9/11. Peter Jennings in the studio.
This is down in Lower Manhattan today. George, I don't know if you heard a little earlier me raise this question, which was actually raised by ABC's Jackie Judd as we look at these areas down below and the video of where the towers used to stand and where is all the rubble gone. And have you been able to, is there any way you can answer that question?
I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't get the question.
Okay, I apologize. Jackie Judd and several other people keep asking us, when you look at where the towers used to stand, there is surprisingly so little rubble. Where did all the rubble go?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I have asked some people who've been doing some of the rescue and recovery work this morning. If you look behind me, you can see the very remains, the skeletal remains of the World Trade Center. And one volunteer, Robert Gerlinski, explained to me the reason there's so little rubble is that all of it simply fell down into the ground and was pulverized, evaporated.
This is vital information. I really feel for George Stephanopoulos. He's got this job telling the world what's going on there, and that's the best he could do. And we humans tend to keep asking questions until we're given an answer. We don't stop to think if the answer makes sense. So what he is telling us is that it's obvious there's a big lack of material there. And here's an elevation map of what was left. And you see Building 4 went missing, the holes in Building 6. Here's a firefighter in Stairwell B.
I heard this very, very loud noise above me. It was just a tremendous roar.
Down here, while that picture was taken.
It was above, and it sounded like it was coming towards you. And
heart, I have different, I get tiger blood, man. I'm too smart to blink, and I cured my brain. That's epic. The run I was on made Sinatra, Flynn, Jagger, Richards, all of them just look like, droopy-eyed, armless children. I expose people to magic. I expose them to something they're never otherwise going to see in their boring, normal lives, and I gave that to them. I may forget about every single wrong, right, every wrong. I'm the total freaking rock star from Mars. Baby, come on, bro, I got tiger blood. Baby, you bottle my brains and be like, dude, can't handle it. Go in here, go in there, go everywhere.
I've got a list, got me so this. From the epic win to the desperately win this. Chicken nuggets, bubble gum, pretending to text to avoid someone. Slow dancing, slow dancing, breaking the rules of the Geneva Convention.
Weak.
Adonis blood, violent love, giving needed women caresses and hugs. Childbirth, calling birth, taking wicked first.
Duh. Winning. I was banging 7-gram rocks. That's how I roll. Winning. I had one gear. Go. Epic. Winning. Are you bipolar? I'm bi. Winning. Go in here. Go in there. Go everywhere. I'm a total freaking rock star from Mars. Winning. Come on, bro. I got tiger blood. Winning. You bottle my brains and be like, dude, can't handle it. Go in here. Go in there. Go everywhere.
When the king of Persia married Esther and found out she was a Jew, and he's just like, well, save him, don't kill him, let him live, because you'd have to kill my honey. And then the king of Babylon, you all know, he was called by God and shown the miracles, and then he still went like, hey, look what I built. So 7 years he had to be like an animal, and then he woke up and said, I'm going to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Jehovah is the one God. And everybody, go ahead and worship your own Elohim, but know this. The Most High rules in Jerusalem. All of the people from Persia, the Medes, we know that because they showed up looking for Jesus, going like, we brought him presents. You know, everybody was waiting for the Messiah except the den of thieves. That's how everything gets disseminated, where it was one world on one page. And after Messiah was crucified and rose from the dead, there was 40 years. And that is what supposedly in our recent history, the two industrial revolutions where everything changed happened. It's time to look at it as, have we been missing something? Very possible. Don't let your friends tell you anything else. It's a flat earth nation. The golden age is past because the Mudflood was Armageddon. We are born again. It's the only way we can overcome our orphan train brains. The fact that our parents and grandparents were either in on it or they're sheep like us who were stuck in changing history and basically just, you know, fell in love and wanted to raise a family and put us in school where the globe was waiting for us. It's the Jesuits, it's the Freemasons, it's the Rosicrucians, and believe it or not, the John Birch Society. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We're trying to prove we have your best interest at heart by holding on to the plow. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nagamet. Adios, amigos, from the border of southern Colorado into Mexico.